Hey, this is Derica Fomasili, and welcome to the Happiness Recipe Summit, where top experts are revealing their secret ingredients so you can create your own recipe for happiness. And that vital ingredient we're talking about today is love. It's all about love. And we know in that pot, if love is not in there, in this happiness recipe, we're not that happy. And so today is a very important ingredient we're talking about. And we are discussing that with yours truly, Arielle Love. I say love because Ford is just love for me. She is a leading personality in the personal growth and contemporary spirituality movement. A gifted writer, she is the author of 11 books, including the international bestseller, The Soulmate Secret. Manifest the love of your life with the law of attraction. She has been called the Cupid of consciousness and the fairy godmother of love. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's so great to meet you.
Yes, thank you. So we're going to jump right on into this love ingredients. Can you share a little bit of your story and how you became known as the fairy godmother of love?
Well, it was never on my to-do list to become a love and relationship expert. I fell into it quite by accident. I woke up one morning. I was 43 years old, and I had this epiphany, which was basically, oh my God, I forgot to get married. And I started thinking about how in the world did that happen? I mean, I owned a very successful business. I had a condo in Beverly Hills, lots of friends. I was in great shape. I mean, I had everything you could imagine except no husband. And I hadn't even really thought about it that much until that moment. And I started looking at my life, and what I realized was that I had been putting all my time and energy and attention on my career. And pretty much the only time I thought about relationships was usually on a Saturday night around 11 o'clock. I'd be driving home from a gala or party or a screening or something fun. And I realized that I had nobody to talk to about it. And then I'd make up my mind, okay, starting Monday, I'm going to work on my love life. And then Monday would come and I'd get caught up. And the pattern just repeated and repeated and repeated.
Wow.
So I started thinking, well, I built my whole career and really my whole lifestyle using the tenets of the law of attraction. And I wondered, could I do that for my love life? And I thought, well, I have nothing to lose. So I made a list, it was 9 pages long, of every prayer, process, and ritual I had ever done to manifest anything in my life. And I began to focus and apply them to my love life. And within a year, I manifested this amazing man who's now been my husband for over 22 years. And I saw that it really worked. And I never planned to share it with anybody, except every single woman I knew over 40 started asking me, well, how do I get a Brian? So I would share my process with them, and then it would work for them. And to make a super long story short, it just snowballed to the degree that it became my career. I wrote The Soulmate Secret. It was published in 21 languages in 40 countries and became this international bestseller. And then I started teaching workshops, and one thing led to another. And it turns out that what worked for me has now worked for tens of thousands of men and women around the world.
What an incredible, beautiful story. I have to give a little background to this. Arielle Ford has been someone that I admired from afar for many, many years. And to have her presence and her wisdom here with us is such an incredible honor. And I feel like everyone, please have your paper and your pens ready because she is going to just give. I know her, I've heard her speak so much, and her books are full of wisdom. You're going to want to put down these nuggets of gold. If you're looking for love or wanting to keep it, have your paper and pen ready. All right? Thank you. So, can someone who's never heard of attraction or law of attraction, can you just give us kind of a brief intro of what is law of attraction and how can we use that to attract a mate?
So the law of attraction states that we draw to us the people, places, and things that match our state of being. So if our state of being is I'm loving, I'm lovable, love comes easily to me, that will be your state of being. But if your state of being is I'm unlucky in love, I'm unlovable, love's for other people, not for me, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too damaged, all the good ones are taken. If that's the energy, the frequency you're vibrating at, that too will be your experience. So when we use the law of attraction, there's it's pretty much a formula. It's a recipe, and it works for everything, not just for love. You can use it for anything. So first, you have to have clarity. What is it that your heart, your soul is calling for? What is that desire, and what does that desire feel like? So you have to be very specific about it. And then you have to go into action. You have to take action steps. Well, in terms of wanting to manifest a romantic soulmate life partner, that means you have to be dating. Okay, in order to be dating in these day and ages, in lockdown and COVID and all that, you have to be online. You have to be willing to go online, and you have to know how to date online in a way that's effective. Because most people listening to us will say, "Well, I've tried it and it didn't work for me." And I'm telling you right now, it didn't work for you because you didn't know what you were doing. It doesn't work unless you know what you're doing. So I have created a free online dating guide for anybody who wants to download it at my website. You just go to soulmatesecret.com and it pops up. There's nothing to do. It's free.
And
So
we're
you
going to link
become
that too.
visible, right? You have to become visible. And then you have to really practice what I call feelingizations. So people know what a visualization is. And I say visualizations don't work. And the reason they don't work is because a visualization is a pretty picture in your head. So let's say you want a new convertible blue BMW, and you close your eyes and you're visualizing this gorgeous car, and you see yourself driving down the freeway and your hair is blowing in the wind, and you can smell the leather seats and you can feel the wooden steering wheel. So you can see all those pretty pictures, right? But if your internal feeling process is, I don't deserve it, I can't afford it, I'm never going to happen, it's never going to happen, those feelings cancel out your pretty pictures. It's like having your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. You can't get what your heart desires by visualizing, but you can get your heart's desire by doing a feelingization. So what I do with people, it's like a guided meditation. We take you from your head to your heart. We get into the state known as heart coherence, which was researched by the Institute of Heart Math. And you get into a state of feeling love and appreciation and gratitude. And when you're in that state, it is from that state that you can then manifest. That's sort of the short version of what it is. But I also give away a ton of feelingizations at the same website. It's under a tab called Free Stuff. So you get clear, you get clarity. What is it you most desire? You do your feelingizations. You go into action. So if it's a relationship you want, you start dating. If it's a job you want, you start going online and going on job interviews. There's steps to take, and you're all smart enough to know what those steps are. And then this is the part where most people get tripped up. You have to begin living as if. Because when you're living as if, your behavior matches your belief. So if your belief is, I am in a long-term, loving, committed relationship, I'm happy, satisfied, and content, what are the behaviors that you could start to demonstrate that are the reflection of that belief? And I'll give you just one simple example of that. You might go to a card store and start buying I love you just because cards, happy birthday cards, Valentine's Day cards, happy anniversary cards, until you have a whole drawer full of greeting cards that you're going to give your beloved someday. That's a behavior that's living as if. Or if you've been sleeping in your high school boyfriend's ratty old football jersey that has holes in it, you would throw that away and start sleeping in beautiful lingerie. Get the idea? So you want to be living as if. So your behavior matches your beliefs. So those are just some of the simple steps involved in manifesting a soulmate. Now here's the thing everybody listening can do right now. I believe that a soulmate is somebody that you can completely be yourself with, somebody with whom you share unconditional love, and when you look into their eyes, you have the experience of being home. Now, all of us have people in our lives that fit that description. It could be our parents, our kids, our siblings, our best friend, our coworkers, even our cats or our dogs. So if you make a list of all the soulmates you already have in your life, and you do a daily gratitude process, thanking God and the universe for the abundance of love you already have, that daily practice makes your heart magnetic to bringing in a soulmate life partner on the romantic level.
That is so good. I can sense a lot of people kind of, because as you're talking, I can see in the areas where we are doing some of it and we're not doing some of it. Right? You kind of cleared it up that it starts with first knowing what do you want?
Clarity, right? Right.
Yeah, the clarity and as you're going through now, I've got to feel it. I Visualization is what we all know, but you took it to the next level. Feelingization, that's where you're wanting them to feel as if it's right here, right? That is so perfect. And then you'll just take
Yeah,
the action
Wayne
steps.
Dyer used to talk about how there are people in the world who say, I'll believe it when I see it. And he always said, no, you'll see it when you believe it. And this is slippery stuff. It sounds
Right.
really simple, but the truth is, I've been working with the law of attraction since September 12th, 1984. I can't even do the math on how many years that is, but it was a long time ago. And I
Yeah.
still study this every day. And I still do reminders and I still read and listen to videos. And there's so many great teachers out there that at least once a day I'm reading or listening to something on this subject because it's a good reminder. It's so easy to forget. It's kind of like, let's say you woke up one morning and you've never been a runner, but you decided, I'm going to run a 10K in 6 months, right? Now, you would know to do a couple things. One would be buy some shoes, right? The next thing would be to go for a walk. And then maybe you might jog a half a block. But every day you would be taking action towards your goal to be able to run a 10K in 6 months, right? You wouldn't have to keep reminding yourself, oh, let's see, I haven't run in 17 days. No, it's a daily practice. So the people who are the most successful at manifesting, whether it's manifesting a lifetime partner, manifesting a job, manifesting, whatever it is your heart desires, are the people who are disciplined, who
Yeah.
actually take the steps. They drop into their heart. They feel what it feels like to have what they ask for, and then they take the action steps.
So, what do you think the number one thing is that's keeping someone from actually attracting that love?
Oh, probably I would say their beliefs. They believe that maybe we each only get one love in a lifetime. Not true. Because, they're divorced and they thought that person was their soulmate. Now they're not together anymore. Therefore, they weren't the soulmate. And the truth is, we all have many potential soulmates throughout our lives. And just because you divorce somebody doesn't mean they weren't your soulmate. It just means the relationship had an expiration date. Or they believe they live in the wrong city, or that they're just a loser when it comes to love, that they have, their childhood was too bad. They have all kinds of reasons and excuses about why they can't have love, none of which are true. Okay. None of them are true. None of us are perfect. We're all perfectly imperfect. And there are many potential soulmates for absolutely everybody, no matter what your age, where you live, how much you weigh, how much money you have or you don't have. It's just not true. So um, the reason people who don't have a relationship and they're complaining about it, it isn't any of those reasons. It's because they're afraid of getting hurt again and they hang on to beliefs to protect themselves. And the truth is, anybody who's ever been in a relationship, even if it was the greatest relationship in the world, will tell you love hurts. It's just how it is. You will get hurt again. Absolutely. But are you willing to die alone because you're afraid of getting hurt? And that's the choice you have to make. I mean, I always tell people finding the soulmate is the absolute easiest part of the whole thing. Finding them so easy. It's learning to live with them and to love and accept them for the imperfect beings that they are. That's where the real work is.
Exactly. What would you I could see that. We get the lover in our life, and then we have to then grow and nourish this soulmate love, right? And that's kind of where ah that's where you fall in with the next chapter, with the next book of how to now maintain that love life. You've got them in there, but how do we keep them as a soulmate?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to approach that. Let me explain to you what wabi sabi is first. That's probably the easiest way. So let's assume that this is an ancient Chinese Ming vase, a priceless Ming vase, and has a long crooked crack down the center of it. The Japanese would take this broken vase, they would put it on a pedestal, and they would shine a spotlight on the crack. Because in their culture, it's called wabi sabi. Wabi sabi honors all things old, worn, broken, imperfect, and impermanent. And it seeks to find beauty and perfection and imperfection. So I made up this word called wabi sabi love, where we learn to love and accept our own imperfections and especially those of our mates. Because no matter how hard you try, you are never going to be perfect, and the one you love is never going to be perfect. So, how can you coexist from an open hearted place? How can you love them for exactly who they are? And that's what's really hard for most people. We want things our way, we want them when we want them, and we want to be right and make somebody else wrong. And the truth is, when you're married to somebody, you guys grew up in different containers. So what was a practice in your house was not a practice in their house. And the other sort of, what's the word for it? The unfunny nature's trick is that generally what happens in a partnership is that you have lots of opposites. So one person's always on time, the other's always late. One's a perfectionist and super clean, the other's a messy slob. One wants it hot, one wants it cold. One wants sex twice a day, one wants it twice a month. And all of this is totally normal. And yet people get divorced over stupid stuff like that. We just couldn't get along, too many differences. Instead of saying, well, what's a win-win situation that we can create here? How can everybody get their needs met to some degree? And that requires having open, honest, respectful communication and be willing to ask for what you need in a way that's going to get results. And so in my book, Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate, I explain in detail how to do this. There are actually scripts on how to have those conversations where you can have a really happy relationship with somebody who's very different from you. The only caveat to all of this is that if you're with somebody who is either abusive or has active addiction, nothing I do or say can help you at all, except to tell you to get professional help. Okay, there's no wabi-sabi solution to abuse or addiction or really bad behavior. But beyond that, whatever they're doing that you think is intolerable, you can find a way through.
Absolutely. As you said that, there's so many cases, divorce cases you hear, and broken relationships, even my own in the past, where we just didn't get along. There was so many things that he did different or I did different, right? And you're saying it's those differences of why we even became together, why we were attracted.
Right, because you were judging, you were blaming and shaming and judging. Oh,
Mm.
that's not the right way to do it. We need to do it this way, as opposed to just saying, you know what? Um, I'll give you a really good example. It's kind of a silly one, but
Yeah.
when I first got married, I would walk into the bathroom and I would see my tube of toothpaste all mangled from the middle. And it used to drive me crazy. And I remember telling Brian, listen, honey, let me show you the proper way to get toothpaste out of the tube. You squeeze it from the bottom and then you slowly roll it up until it's all used up. And he would just look at me like I was out of my mind and leave the room. And this would go on and on, but every time I saw my mangled tube of toothpaste, I would feel annoyed. And I realized that it was my problem, not his. And so one day I had a conversation with the tube of toothpaste and I put it in the palm of my hand. And I said, okay, toothpaste, what's good about you? And the toothpaste answered me. And the toothpaste said, thank God you married a man who brushes his teeth. And I realized in that moment that every time I saw the mangled tube of toothpaste, by the way, 23 years later, he still does it. Now I laugh when I see it because I'm so grateful that he cares enough to look after his teeth. So when we get really old together, he'll still have teeth. That's a wabi-sabi love solution. And I want you to notice, we didn't have a big conversation about it. We didn't sit down and go, oh, honey, we need to talk, right? He never changed. What changed was my story about the behavior. And while this may sound like a silly one, every couple's got about 20 of these silly ones, and then they add up. I mean, we've had arguments of everything from how to stack the dishwasher to the proper way to put items in the recycling bin. I mean, and people get righteous about it. Like Brian actually really cares how items are placed in the recycling bin. It's like it's all going to be dumped into the dumpster. Why does it matter? But it matters to him. And it's easier because it does matter to him just to do it his way. Just like there are things he'll do for me because it's easier to do it. And for some reason, we weren't brought up with this idea to be kind and loving and respectful to the person we claim to love the most.
Right. Right. You're just hitting it on the nail. I can see every relationship out there saying, "Yep, yep." It's all those little things right there. And you're saying here with this wabi sabi is that you're focusing on the gold, not the dirt. Because there's a lot of other little things around, right? But it's like the story and why those things. Well, he's brushing his teeth for me, or finding
Exactly.
the
And
beauty
the
in
thing
it.
to do is when they're being annoying, like, let me show you. These are rose colored glasses. And when you consciously decide to wear rose colored glasses, what you're doing is you're choosing to look for what's right instead of looking for what's wrong. So if you were spending your days looking for everything your partner's doing right, you have no time to pay attention to what you call wrong. And to take it to a really effective point is once you notice all the things they do right, then tell them, acknowledge them. You can do it, every time they do something, or you could save it all up so that at the end of the day, you just spout off 5 different things. And it could be as simple as, oh, honey, I saw you helping little Johnny with his math homework today. You were just the best dad on the planet, and I'm so lucky to have you as my husband. Now that's going to get you a whole lot further than, I can't believe what an idiot you are. You left wet towels on the bathroom floor again. Choose. If they've been leaving wet towels on the floor for 17 years, chances are it's not going to change. But what could change is you could just pick it up and put it in the hamper and move on instead of seething and raging and having all this toxicity leaking off of you. It's your
Yeah,
choice.
absolutely right. Do you have a love story that you could share with us? Someone that you've helped guide from being single, someone who didn't hasn't had the love or he was searching, and into that soulmate.
Oh gosh, I have gazillions of them.
I bet.
I'll tell you one of my favorites. It's about my mother-in-law, Peggy.
Mm.
And she had been married for 55 years, and then her husband, Wayne, died. And then she was a widow for 5 years, and she got this cute little dog named Noodles. And Noodles was infamous because he was always humping everybody's leg. And then one day she called and said to me, I'm ready for a relationship. What do you think I should do? And I said to her, well, Peggy, you're 80. And she said to me, does that matter? And I thought about it and I said, no, I don't think it does. So we did this little crash course in the Soulmate Secret on manifesting a relationship. At the time, I didn't have any belief that it was going to work ever. I mean, not for a second. I thought I was just being nice. Well, 2 weeks later, she called me up and she said, I have a date for lunch tomorrow. It's like, you do? How did that happen? She said, well, you know my friend Connie? I said, you mean Connie, who's my age, the realtor? And she said, yes. She said, Connie came over last night with her laptop and she took me on the World Wide Web and we went to a place called Match.com. Have you ever heard of it? And I said, actually, Peggy, I have. And she said, well, you know, me and computers, I don't even have one. She said, there were 3 men in my category, in the over 80 category. And one of them was a widower who was a retired lawyer like my dear departed Wayne. And Connie somehow sent him a message and told him about me and gave him my phone number. And he called this morning. His name is John. And we talked for 2.5 hours. And he's asked me out to lunch. So tomorrow we're meeting for lunch. I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's so great. I said, well, as soon as you get home, you have to call me and tell me all about your date. So the next day, starting at 1 o'clock, I kept waiting for the phone to ring. And 1 o'clock came, and 2 o'clock came, and 3 o'clock came. And suddenly it was 3:45. And she was up in Portland, Oregon, so it was winter. It was starting to get dark that time of day. And I was starting to get worried because she's too old to be driving at night. And finally, like 10 minutes to 4, she calls. It's like, Peggy, are you okay? I was so worried about you. She goes, oh, I just had the best time. We had the most amazing lunch. We talked and talked and talked until we both had to get on the road before it got dark. Anyway, that was the start of her relationship with John. And then about 2 months after that, she called me up and she said, I have a really big problem. And I thought, oh no, John dumped her. What happened? I said, what's the matter? She said, John proposed. And I said, well, do you love him? She said, that's not the problem. I said, well, what's the problem? She said, I'm going to die, Mrs. Wayne Hilliard. I said, well, what did you say to him? She said, I told him we could shack up. I said, well, what did he say? And he said, absolutely not. He's one of the elders in his church. And he said, what would the church ladies say? And she said, we have a real problem. We're both in our 80s. We don't have a lot of time and we want to be together. But I don't want to get married and he won't live together. And I, at that point, handed the phone to my husband. I said, your mom needs you. I was like, I don't know what to do. So then my friend Marianne Williamson happened to call. She's called out of the blue. So I'm telling her this story. And it's like, Marianne, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, darling, I know exactly what to do. I said, well, of course you do. What's the solution? She said, you call them back and tell them that I'll fly to Portland and I will officiate a spiritual wedding for them. And that way he can have the wedding, but there's no legal papers involved. So I got on the phone and I told both of them, because John is also a fan of Marianne's, and they were so happy that they immediately put both their houses up for sale. Then they went and bought a cottage on the grounds of an assisted living facility. And they spent the next 3.5 years together, super happy, even though Marianne never did do that ceremony. They lived together for 3.5 years, super happy, until John died. And then a year later, Peggy died. But you know what this story really proved was a couple of things. You know, what we talked about earlier is what gets in people's way is their beliefs. Well, Peggy didn't have a belief that love wasn't possible for her. And do I have her picture here? I don't. Anyway, let me tell you what Peggy looked like. So, Peggy had white hair. She was about 50 pounds overweight. She had lots of wrinkles. She looked like the typical grandmother. She was not a hot 80, like Jane Fonda's a hot 80. Peggy was the poster child for, grandma from mid century. And John, too. It wasn't like they were this drop dead gorgeous couple, but they found each other on the first try on Match.com. They got together, they fell in love, and they, you know, really what Peggy later said to me, she said, I had a good marriage. She said, but in many ways, my first husband couldn't give me the emotional support that I really wanted because he was from a different generation. And she said, everything I ever wanted from Wayne, I got from John.
No.
He could, every time she walked into a room, he would light up and tell her how beautiful she was and how much he adored her. And it was just perfect. So I know that this stuff works. The only thing standing in the way of anybody in love is their belief and their willingness to put themselves out there.
Yes.
Hang on a second.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an incredible story. My heart was just flickering for her. That's so beautiful. It's like it doesn't matter your like you're saying before, your age, your size, your background, what you got going on, none of that matters. It's just your belief if you can do it. You can have that love, that clarity of what that love would feel like. And there it was for her. And she got everything. It sounded like the whole package. Like she got everything she's ever wanted for those few years until the rest of her life.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, can I share a little story
Sure.
real quick? So, I want to just validate every little thing you're saying because I know you have a gorgeous love story with Brian as well. So, my husband, before we met, he watched The Secret. And The Secret and what you're saying, they're on point with this information exactly. They're validating each other. And so he watched this documentary anyway. He goes to work the next day and it's time stamped everything. On the back of this letter, he writes, I'm so happy and thankful for my wife. And he begins to write the personality and the feelings of how we both make each other feel. 4 days later, we run in together.
Oh, wow. That was fast.
Right. It was 4 days. And I read this letter and I kind of got a little creeped out because it was so much like me. Like, to everything, my personality, how I act with people, and it was like, wait a minute. Like, have you been here this whole time? Kind of a feeling. But that's what it was. He let go of any patterns he had or pains he had before and just had hope and just leaped into that faith, wrote it out. And it can be that quick, just like your mother in law. 2 weeks, 4 days. I mean, that's how fast it is, right?
For some people, and then it can also take years, and it doesn't mean that it's not happening. That happened to a friend of mine. She'd come and read my books and done my workshops, and she'd been divorced for 20 years. And then she kept calling me and calling me. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And I said, there's a divine timing to all of this. You're not doing anything wrong. And the day that you meet your soulmate, you're going to find out what took so long. And then, 3 years after she did my workshop, she called and she said to me, you were right. And I was like, what are you talking about? Right about what? She
Yeah.
said, I've met him. And the reason it took so long is that his wife had been dying of cancer for many years, and he had just buried her 6 months ago. And now that we've met, he's ready to move on. And Brian and I danced at her wedding 7 years ago. And I asked her at the wedding, I said, was he worth waiting for? And she said, absolutely. So whether it happens in 4 days or 4 years, it's not up to us. It's God's timing. But it is up to us to make ourselves visible and available to love.
Oh, that's the secret sauce on top of all this. You get yourself through all of your teachings, through your book. We're going to get into these phenomenal free gifts you have, but get us into that state of being sort of that tower, that attractor, of that person. And then now we just let it go, let God, and allow that process to happen. And just allow that alignment or timing to be. Is that like the perfect kind of place to be?
Yes, exactly.
Love that. Okay, so I think we've touched on it, and unless you have something else that's kind of coming to your heart that you can feel maybe the viewers need to know a little bit more of.
I think we've really covered a lot in a short amount of time. I mean, this is really the basis. You have to commit. Are you going to take a stand for your love life? Are you willing to open your heart and become visible? And maybe now isn't the right time. I mean, if you're a single mom with 3 kids and working full time and doing homeschooling, you may not have the time or the energy to give. And so stop thinking about it. Give yourself time to be present to what you have to do right now, knowing that someday in the future will be the right time. Because so many people say to me, I tell them how much time's involved with all of this, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just too busy. I'll make the time when I meet somebody." And it's like, no, that's actually not how it happens. When you make the time, there's space for someone to come into. You have to create a vacuum for somebody to be delivered into.
That's beautiful. Okay, everyone, you hearing that? You're checking the time out with your space, making sure is this ask yourself, right? Would you say just kind of ask yourself, is this the right time? And do I have enough time to devote to this self-work and figuring out that clarity? And there's a lot of mental shifting, right? To believe in that, right? So as Arielle is saying, there's work to be done. And if it isn't the time, I'm hearing she's saying, just kind of relax right now, deal with the stuff that's right here, and then let that one surface again when it's ready. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go right into these free gifts. You guys, she mentioned earlier how you can get them on our website, but in the email, there's also the link to her site and all ways that you can contact her. We'll make sure that there is a link to these free gifts for you. So if you're single, we have the online dating guide. And if you have your mate and you're wanting to increase that love and make that mate your soulmate, she is giving away free chapters to her book, Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate. So we're going to make sure that you have those links there. And everyone, I'm sure you're feeling the love in this, and you've got notes. You have things to do now. But thank you, Arielle, for being here and sharing your power and your love wisdom with all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, listeners, for chiming on in. And if you love this powerhouse with all of this love, you're going to love the next episode as well. So keep your eye out for that next interview to come. And everyone, have a beautiful day.